What's up, this is Brandon Smitley, BrandonSmitley.com. Got a question over on the YouTube, and the question came from Wendell Sowers, and he asks, what's your opinion on where the sport, powerlifting, is going in terms of raw versus geared, or single ply versus multiply, etc.? Well, that's a great question. Ironically enough, David Kirshen, teammate of Elitefts, made a video of geared versus raw the other day, and it was spot on. I'm not going to even attempt to reiterate what he said, as I couldn't agree more. But to answer this question is a little bit different, because it's more of where I think it's going rather than where we're at. It's kind of obvious that raw powerlifting right now tends to be the big hit, and there's nothing wrong with that. And that could be due to several factors, ease of access and entry into meets, quick learning curve, the rapid growth in CrossFit and getting some carryover from that. And then we also see the advancement in gear and how vital it is to have a training partner for the gear to work and get your optimal training effect out of it. So there's a couple of reasons why raw is big like it is, and that's mainly my thought on that. And like I said, I'm not going to go into the raw versus gear. But moving forward, I think you're going to continue to see an increase in raw, just because, again, it's super easy to get into. You don't even technically have to have anything equipment-wise. You just need a singlet and a pair of deadlift socks and some kind of shoes, and you can go compete at a meet as long as you've got the entry fee and the gas to get there. You don't have to have knee wraps and wrist wraps and a belt and anything like that. I mean, it's pretty easy to go to a meet and compete. Now, to compete at high levels and take a little bit more in most cases, you're certainly going to give some more investment into things like belts and wraps and wrist wraps, maybe different types of shoes, things of that nature. But I think that when it comes to gear, especially single ply, multiply, where things are going is kind of still unknown. There's certainly advancements in gear. The gear is getting better. Everyone's putting out newer lines, different versions, trying to make upgrade just as you would in any other sport. When it comes to racing, they look at different ways to get performance upgrades in their cars, and powerlifting is the same way. I mean, we're going to figure out ways to make our shoes better, our belts better, our wraps better, our wrist wraps better, our single ply suits, our multiply suits, the bench shirts, the deadlift suits. So I mean, that aspect of it is just growth in sport in general. That happens with every sport across the board. The only minor sport that doesn't even really see that much is basically swimming and a little bit of track and field, even though they're constantly improving spikes and different kind of training apparel. But for the most part, running is running and swimming is swimming, and at the end of the day, lifting is lifting. So I think that the raw crowd will also eventually kind of dabble back into the gear. There tends to be cycles of things, whether you're looking at fashion or sport and politics. There's usually a nice pattern that kind of goes back and forth, and I think powerlifting will be the exact same way. I think raw is really big right now, but I think at the same time, when it's going to get oversaturated, I think everyone's just going to be doing it, and people are going to find that while there is competition, that it also could be fun to maybe get in the gear and try to go for the PC World Championship. Or maybe that gives you the opportunity to travel internationally, where raw-wise you may not be able to do so. So there's certainly different things, and as any athlete wanting to push their own boundaries from their own athleticism, in this case weights, we're going to try to push the boundaries of how much weight we can possibly lift. And I think there's going to be a point to where many of the raw people are going to understand that to make a longevity in the sport and to continue to handle heavier weights and want to handle even heavier weights than what you can raw, you're going to have to get in gear to do so. And that being said, I think the raw people will begin to understand that over time. There's enough bickering as I've alluded to with Dave Christian's video. It's just powerlifting. I mean, it's really nothing more. I understand that some people do try to make a living off of it, and if you enjoy training people and working with athletes and stuff, that's a bit different. There's a much bigger niche. Powerlifting, not so much. I mean, it's great to write training programs for clients and see results, and while that does certainly help me generate revenue to make a minor living, but at the same time, the payout for a competitive powerlifter is nothing. I just won my first cash show from powerlifting, and I will honestly be surprised if I ever win anything more than that. Doesn't really pay the bills. It's just a nice little, okay, I kind of got a little something for my efforts. Maybe I'll go buy a little nice something this, and that's it. So where it goes, I think, is going to be really dependent upon how we treat each other in the sport. If it continues to go back and forth with this raw versus gear and whether you're using knee wraps or not using knee wraps, people are just going to say screw it and go to weightlifting. There's nearly not near enough bickering there. You can't argue depth. You might be able to argue a press-out call on a snatch, but judging is pretty freaking consistent in the USAW. And they're always looking for better athletes, and if people see that we can't get along, they're going to go to a sport where they're more likely to be able to get along, because there's really not as much bickering about the little things. It's more united, and there's also a higher potential of reaching a bigger stage. I mean, there's no bigger stage than the Olympics, and the powerlifting, I'm sorry, is never going to get to the Olympics, despite what people try to do. So, well, it would be great to see it go that way. It's not going to, until there is true unity between all different types of lifting and powerlifting. It's just not going to happen. I would just like to see people respect each other, going from any way that you choose to get into the sport. Have fun with it. It's certainly a journey. It's a process. It takes time to get strong, regardless of what kind of equipment you're using. And anyone that thinks otherwise hasn't spent enough time in either enough genres. You know, most of my time has been raw, but I'm experiencing for the first time, getting in gear, how tough it really is. And I think that is what the problem is being able to sit behind a keyboard and assume that you can throw on a piece of equipment and essentially get more weight. When it takes time to learn different aspects of different sports, while you might be a great sprinter at 100 meters, it doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be a great sprinter at 400 meters. Just because you're going to have to run longer, and vice versa. Just because you can run 400 meters exceptionally well doesn't mean that you can run the 100 meters faster than Usain Bolt, because you can beat Usain Bolt's 400 time. So that's certainly an extreme example, but at the same time, it's still track and field, it's still sprinting, you're just dealing with different beasts. And the same thing goes with powerlifting. I would like to see the sport move to not really, certainly more unified as a whole, but that comes down to each individual's. But from a federation standpoint, I would even like to see federations quit bashing each other based upon what lifts are passed and what their federation offers compared to other federations. I think it's great no matter what federation offers what. Stick with what you have, be confident with what you offer as a federation, and let the lifters come to you and just put out good meets and have good, fair, consistent judging. If you offer a raw division that doesn't have knee wraps, that's fine. People will come lift without knee wraps without you having to bash a knee wrap crowd. That also may eventually play into your favor if you don't do that, because a knee wrapped raw lifter may decide to get out of the wraps and go to your federation because the meets are actually good. They're judged consistently. There's good equipment. It's fun. There's good venues. That's what's going to help powerlifting more than anything else, individually and federation-wise, is just not being stupid and going after each other. I like to see different types of powerlifting on my social media from different people, whether it be raw females, multiply females, raw males, multiply males, single ply, whatever. I follow a bunch of different people just because I like seeing the way they train and the effort they give to what they do. And most of those people are the people that aren't pecking their keyboards saying, oh, raw sucks, or oh, gear sucks, or put on a bench shirt, or take the shirt off and see what you can do. That's just absolutely absurd. Now, if you do have an issue with somebody, I think the great thing about powerlifting is go compete against them. Pick out the same meet, pick out the same equipment, and go head to head and shut each other up on the platform rather than through YouTube videos and social media and forums. That's the great thing about the sport, is that you can do that. Same thing with, like, when I used to wrestle, people would always talk trash back and forth across the state and in the county, and the day that it mattered was the day that you got on the mat and put it to them and showed them who was talking the stuff and who needed to back it up and who needed to shut up. And that's exactly how powerlifting is. You can run as much as you want, but if you want to talk stuff, go after the individual on the platform, not on the keyboard. To me, that's perfectly acceptable, because that's how competition grows, and that's what's going to benefit the sport more than anything else, is seeing great head-to-head matchups, stacked weight classes at one single meet. That's how we help each other moving forward. That's the only ideas that I've got as where I think it's going to go. It's going to be hard to tell. Other than that, it will be interesting to kind of see what happens over the next year or two, especially with CrossFit, and as the saturation of that aspect is happening, as well as there's just so many CrossFit gyms now that eventually it's going to get oversaturated, and the crappy ones are going to die out. The good ones are going to stick around, and those people in those gyms are going to have to figure out what they're going to do if they don't have access to a good CrossFit gym. They're either going to have to go to weightlifting, or powerlifting, or bodybuilding, or strongman. And getting some of those people that fall into the powerlifting crowd will really kind of dictate what happens. I think right now Raw is going to stay big just because it's so easy. But then you're going to get people that get good at Raw, and they're going to look for another challenge, and then that's when they're going to find gear, and that's kind of basically what I've done. I mean, I'm certainly not done Raw, but I'm just using the gear as a break. But it's certainly made my training more fun. It's technically harder. It's a challenge, and training Raw, I know what I have to do to get better already. It's not a puzzle anymore. It's just a matter of, can I be patient, put in the time, and stay consistent. As with the gear, I have all that. Now plus I have to learn more. I have to be patient. I have to be more technically dialed in and seek help and use that help to become better at something else that I haven't done before. So that's all my thoughts. Long ramble. Hopefully you took something from it, and hopefully powerlifting continues to grow in the right direction, and I challenge you to please be a positive influence on the sport rather than a negative one. Thank you, and you can keep up with all my training logs and other information at elitefts.com.